The topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
Welcome to Success Secrets Exposed with Sally A. Curtis, where we share stories of challenge, success, and inspiration, along with practical tips and strategies to move you forward to your success. And now, here is your host, Sally A. Curtis.
Good evening, good morning, and good day to you all, and welcome to another episode of Success Secrets Exposed, where we have conversations with today's thought leaders, change makers, and disruptors to bring you tips, tools, and strategies to help you grow. Now, for those that are actually new to the show, I'm a content repurposing whiz for speakers, authors, and coaches, helping them turn their book into 2 years' worth of social media posts. I effectively help them turn their existing content into new profits. And today I'm very, very excited to be sharing with you and talking with Trevor Young, who is a PR and communication strategist and coach. And we're going to be talking about the credible authority method. Now, to give you a little bit of background on Trevor, he is a battle-hardened PR and communication strategist, coach, as well as a speaker and a social broadcaster. He was the pioneer of social media and content marketing within the industry here in Australia. And Trevor also established his popular blog, The PR Warrior, back in 2007. He is the author of 2 books, including The Content Marketing for PR, and he hosts the very, very popular Reputation Revolution, a podcast that's all about personal brand, influence, and impact. So please help me welcome to the show, Trevor Young.
G'day, Sally. How are you?
Very, very well. Thank you. G'day to you as well.
Yes. Sorry, that's the Australian coming out.
Very much so.
Hello, Sally. Great to be on the show. Thank you for having me, and always enjoy our chats. So really looking forward to getting into today.
Yeah, so am I, very much so, because I dare say we're going to go off on all sorts of different tangents around content, around strategy, and the way that people can level up and increase their influence for themselves as well. So I'm really, really keen to dive into this credible authority method that I know you've been unpacking over time, but I'd really like you to give us a little bit more of your backstory that's actually led you to these incredible and recent insights.
Yeah, thanks, Sally. Look, my background way back is journalism, but really I've been in public relations and communications for pretty much my whole professional life. I have worked on the agency side pretty much that whole time, so that's exposed me to some of the biggest brands in the world, certainly the biggest brands in Australia, but also small up and comers and startups and fast growth companies and individuals. So I've really been exposed to a lot. I've run my own agencies and sold them and started them and sold them and started and merged, but that's probably the agency side. But more recently, I've been because I started blogging in 2007, and I loved this whole notion of, well, what's this blogging thing? I reckon I learned more in 6 weeks of blogging than what I did in a year of working out what blogging was, and just being on social media and LinkedIn in those early days, that if you ask someone to connect with you, you were definitely seen as a stalker.
Yes, so true.
And Twitter in the early days, when you, like everyone, you jump on and think, what the hell is this? But then, that participating in Twitter when it was really the golden years of Twitter. And I just built my own profile. And being a PR person, I've been in the background for the whole time. And all of a sudden, people were wanting me to speak and do all this. And I've had to learn to go through all this anyway and go with it. So I guess I've tested and learned as I've gone. I've looked at blogging and podcasting for a very long time, and exploring on video and virtually every other social channel. And I'm always looking at how can we use it to build our profile and our reputation and credibility for our brand. So I've gone through that journey, and now I've really helped a lot of other people do it through, whether it's through my content, my speaking. So just for an example, because I did build that profile unbeknownst to me doing it, versus today when you can look back and say, well, I can do this, and be a lot more strategic about it. There was no strategy in the early days, but just by sheer dint of getting out and having a crack with blogging and social, I was asked to speak. I probably did 50 talks for nothing before an agent, one of the top agents in the country, happened to be in the audience, and he said, do you want to speak professionally? So I ended up getting an agent, and then I got a book deal with Wiley Publishing, which is one of the biggest business book publishers in the world. So all that happened around me because I put myself out there, and I guess from that point on, it's then what do you do with the profile and the reputation? So these days I'm more coaching. I do strategy and I coach people, and I guess at the end of the day, for my sins, I join dots. So, for a lot of people, PR is getting media coverage, and it's so not. It may have been 20 years ago, but today that's just, I know PR people who wouldn't even talk to the media at all. And it really shocks people to hear that. But it's really, we can now become our own media channel. We don't have to be, going through the gatekeepers, but that doesn't mean that the whole media relations thing is obsolete either. So I look at all of those elements and join the dots for people, because let's face it, Sally, it's really hard to just do stuff now and to get confused, and there's so much to do, and we can't do it all, nor should we try and do it all if we want to build a brand.
Yeah, I think there's two things that I've really picked up out of there. A is how serendipitous life can be when you just throw yourself in it, and how it just works itself out. But and so many people I know get stuck in that perfectionism, and I know I did that for years. But when you just launch and learn and adapt as you go is where the magic happens. So I wanted to make sure, being the bossy Sally, as so many people know me as, that we've just highlighted that again, that just dive on in, just do something and learn along the way, because that's where you'll create your own opportunities.
Digital serendipity. Don't underestimate it. No ROI whatsoever on it, but boy, it works.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that. I haven't heard that phrase before, so I'm just going to write that down in 2 secs. The other one is the joining of the dots. And I know you and I talk a little bit around finding your inner genius, but I think there's also finding the platform that actually helps you operate and leverage as well. So yes, joining the dots, but you don't have to always have all of the dots. You just need to be on the right dots, if that makes sense, and the right platform. So part of what you talk about with your methodology is around the empowering the voice and getting the strategy and the mindset side of things is right. So I don't know whether you want to start with sharing some of the, I suppose, common problems that you see before you go into it, but I'll let you sort of explore your insights around strategy and mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Well, this is the first part, and I'll just backtrack a little bit. The credible authority method is something that I've been working on. I've only named it in recent weeks. I've been sort of, I guess, building it in public, but this is probably one of the very few times I've actually laid it out properly in public. So it's always a work in progress. It's like any framework that you develop, it's a couple of steps forward, one step back. But I'm pretty comfortable with it, so much so that I think this will be my next book. So I'm putting myself out there on that one. So the first part of it is empower your voice. So this is definitely the prep side of things, getting preparing, and we're talking about, I'll backtrack again for 5 seconds. This is about building a professional personal brand in a way that's strategic, sustainable, and respectful. Now, 2 words I'll highlight there. One is professional, which means this is for credible people. This is not for being an influencer or an Instagrammer or a TikToker. That's not what this is about. This is for people with credibility, who have got the chops, got the runs on the board. And in my experience, the people who are the most experienced and have got the wisdom are the ones least likely to go out and put it out there. So they're the ones I probably tend to help more, and that's why this framework I think is more aimed at them. And the other part is I said strategic and sustainable, but in a respectful way. We all know in the online world, there's a lot of people who aren't really respectful of their audience and their time, and they're always pitching, and, you know, you sign up for something and you get a million emails and all of that. This is about continuing to deliver value and being a really good digital citizen. So that's just a bit of a forward there. All right. So empower your voice really is, yes, there's the strategic part, but I think even before you get to strategy, you've got to look at yourself. You've got to get yourself right. And I don't think you can just turn this on. This is, looking at things like imposter syndrome, which I know a lot of people have. I know I've had that or suffered from it over the journey. It's not something you click your fingers and fix. Perfectionism, the pursuit of perfectionism. I know a lot of, really great professional people and business leaders who suffer from that. So they get into paralysis. They never actually put anything out or ship it, as Seth Godin would say. And those sides of things where it's a lack of confidence. And again, the people who have got the runs on the board often aren't overly confident putting themselves out there. And, you say putting yourself out there, I say putting yourself out there. That's really about creating content, getting out on social media and having a point of view and sharing your ideas in public. That's what we're normally saying there. So really, I think it's a matter of, if this is something that you do struggle with, that you do try and, find ways and means. I'm not I don't think you need a psychologist. My theory is you just go out and do it. And I know that's easier said than done, but, if I looked at speaking, I was in imposter syndrome for years on that, and I hated speaking. And the more I put myself out there, the better I got. And then over time, you just learn to do it, and it's not so bad after all. Once you get out there, and I've done that with clients, is once we've pushed through that wall, then they get a lot more comfortable, and then they get nice feedback, and they don't get trolled and stuff like that, which they're expecting. So that is something I think we've all got to grapple with, but there's, people out there better than me who can help you with it. It's more about understanding that you've got to get over those challenges and roadblocks in your head, at least be aware of them, because it will hold you back from all the other things that we're going to lay out today. The strategy side really is really, pretty much down to the basics, and a lot of this whole method is strategy. But the early building blocks of strategy really are the, understanding yourself and your strengths and your principles, your operating principles and values, what I call your prowess, they are your strengths. Your philosophy. Now, what's your philosophy on your profession, your industry, the things that you do? Have you got a better way to do things? Have you got ideas around the way that you do what you do? Sometimes you might have an enemy. And when we talk about an enemy, that's taking fire at the big guys, or, if you ran a fintech, your enemy would be the big banks, the big nasty banks. So it's not a person necessarily. It's actually time could be the enemy, or, lack of time could be the enemy. So I put that under sort of philosophy of really unpacking that and understanding what that is. And also personality. Is there a quirky trait or something that, they accentuate to differentiate? They say, you've got the red glasses, you're full red, I'm full black. But, this is not about crafting a persona, or that, a fake persona that you want people to, that it's not you, it's not authentically you. But I know some people who, one guy who's really big in Europe, and he's a great content guy and marketing guy, and he's a rock band photographer. He takes photos at rock bands. He loves heavy metal music, and he tries to bring that aspect to him. So in a world where it's really hard there's a lot of noise and really hard to differentiate, I think sometimes is there a little quirky thing that we can do, that a signature. Now, it doesn't have to be visual. It might be, a passion for something. It might be passion for dogs. I say that because we just got a puppy 2 days ago, and he might start yelping any minute now. But what's your passion, and maybe you can infuse that into what you do. But that's really just getting and understanding yourself. Then, of course, it's things like, what do you want to be achieving? What are your goals when it comes to, okay, I'm going to I've already got a personal brand. Everyone's got a personal brand, whether you like it or not. So why wouldn't you want to have some influence over that, is the way I look at it. So if that's the case, then if you're going back to scratch and going back to basics, what do I want to achieve if I do build a brand? Deal. It might be to help with my business. It might be I want to set up a side business one day and move out of corporate. Everyone's got different goals, and I think you just need to be understanding of that without overcooking it. I don't, some people can overcook this, and again, perfection. No one moves anything from there. They stuck on their goals and they don't go any further. So I think it's more about having an understanding and a direction, more than, I want to earn $1 million by the end of next year sort of thing. And so that's sort of that understanding, your goals, your audience, what you're trying to achieve, and the things with the audience too. And once you get into content, you really unpack your audience a lot more. But one thing I do like people to do is to create their own narrative. So in content, as you're all over it, Sally, it's about the audience and what's of interest and relevance to them. Absolutely. But if you look at a Venn diagram, that's one side. But on the other side is what story and the message you want to get out in the marketplace. My audience might be interested in horse racing, and I can talk about horse racing till I'm blue in the face. But if there's no connection back to me, I've got nothing to do with horse racing. Then So what's your narrative and your story? And there's a number of ways to build a narrative, but really, in short, that's your story. It's a little bit of where you've come from, where you want to be headed, what your vision is, some proof points along the way, and the things that you'll develop your own messaging over time that makes up that story. So your story and narrative is never ever evolving beast. If it was a kind of like a startup, it's a lot easier because, well, this is where we come from, and this was the challenge we saw, and this is why we've set up the company and everything. There's a lot more nuance around a person, and I think you'll find when you sit down and think that through, you often really will look back at your philosophy and why with me, my story of coming through the PR agency ranks, and I always thought there was a better way, so I started my own, and then I thought, well, I want some events and experiential to go with it. So I've always pushed the boundaries of what PR is before most people in our industry, and then that puts me out there because I love exploring and I'm curious, and that's why I love for most people. So there's a bit of a pattern that forms. So understanding your story and your narrative, but also being aware that will change over time, and you'll get better with that story. And then we get into content. So the second part is really enhance the credibility of your voice. So this is really your content. Now, when we talk content, we're also talking social media, because you might say, I need a social media strategy. That's fine, but you'll get about this far before you'll run into, I actually need a content strategy first. So
isn't that so true?
Absolutely. And I work with pretty big brands on that, and they say, we want a social media strategy, and I say, okay, you want a content strategy, I'm tipping, but we'll get there. And then we do the content strategy, and then social falls off the back of that. But there's the content side of social media is very important, as you're aware as well. So I mean, content is everything. This is when you do delve into your audience, and you do delve deep into your audience, and you'll always get a better understanding of your audience. If you're a smaller business and a smaller player, you'll probably understand your audience much better than a bigger company that does everything in focus groups. But if you're close to the ground, and you're talking to your customers and potential clients and that sort of thing, the questions, their pain points, and so that's good. But there's two parts. This is where it'll get really interesting too, because there's a number of different parts of content, but I like looking at there's the utility side, and that's the best place for most people to start. And that is really being useful and helpful, because you can't go wrong being useful and helpful. And that really is your answering people's questions and their challenges and their roadblocks and all of that sort of stuff, which is what probably traditional content marketing is about. I'm more about, and if you want to sort of stay the professional expert, and that's where I want to be. I don't want to be a thought leader. I want to be an expert. That's where you'll stay, and you'll go deeper than anyone else. It's becoming very crowded in most industries. So you've got to understand your niche, and you've got to go deeper than everyone else and put your passion and enthusiasm into your content, because why should people listen to you versus this person over here who's pretty much in the same space? The next one on is leadership content. And leadership content is, look, people don't know what they don't know. I always think Seth Godin is a classic exponent of leadership content. He's not there solving your problems. He's poking you in the eye, metaphorically. He's
poking the bear, as we call it here.
Have you thought about this? And that's about putting ideas out there and running with it. And I know we think that thought leadership is this big, lofty, highfalutin thing, and the marketing game is, the whole online world's killed off thought leadership of what it really means. I'd love to reclaim it back again. I think the world needs more thought leaders. We need more experienced people out there pushing us to think bigger, pushing our thoughts and our ideas. But a thought leader should never just be, the old school thought leader would sit there and pontificate, and this is the way it is. Whereas today's thought leader really, is bringing people along for the journey is just as important, and listening to other people and helping, again, join dots of things, of some ideas. And, those ideas can come from anywhere, and they'll often be tied back to your philosophy and what you're thinking, and you'll probably start creating a lexicon, your own language around things. But that's the one that will rise you above others. You might be controversial, you might be thought-provoking. It's not about being controversial for controversy's sake. I know people that love being controversial, and they stand out and they build massive followings, and good on them. But that's not for everyone. And so I think leadership. Sorry, go.
No, I was just going to say, I just wanted to dig into that, because I put a big circle around philosophy, because in my world, the word was, you need to be a disruptor. And I do have that in part of my introduction. But I think people get so hell bent on being that disruptor, and that's where that pause point for themselves come in, going, oh, but what's going to happen if I do disrupt, for those that are in that thought leadership space. But when you said the word philosophy, I went, oh, yeah, because you can have a philosophy around why something doesn't work and what there's new opportunities, which is that stimulation of idea generation or ideation, from not just from yourself, but for your audience as well. So I just wanted to just sort of highlight that, because to me that was such a my own aha moment from changing that word from disruptor to bringing that into the philosophy, and having both sides of the philosophy, which is then sitting into that leadership journey and helping others form and create their own new ideas and their new perspectives and new ways of thinking. So thank you.
You hit the nail on the head there, and new ways of thinking, taking a topic and twisting it around a bit, or research or trends, or I worked at a PR company called Edelman. They're the world's biggest PR firm, and they, for nearly 20 years, they've put out not expecting anyone to go out and do this, but a research report called the Edelman Trust Barometer. And they are now the leaders in trust, in terms of what it is, what it means, and the trends and all of that sort of stuff. And that's a classic big, thought leadership play. Nice. But it doesn't mean I know others that do research at a really much smaller level, and then get some ideas out of that, and then take that thread through as a discussion point. Maybe it's a discussion thread on Twitter. And so it's really about, being prepared to be wrong, and putting an opinion out there, but an opinion based on, hard graft and experience and, research that you've done. And it might be research, if you're in an organization and you see what's happening within that social, and people might be, it's not business necessarily, it could be a social issue. And highlighting that social issue, and we can do better than that. And have we thought about going down this path? So thought leadership is like, and I deal, unfortunately, with a lot of nuance in everything that I talk about. This is why you've got to sort of work where you want to fit in this world. Yeah. So content, we know that content then will become, our audience, but also what will they find interesting? And we can't be all things to all people, so we need to work that out. But I just thought I'd bring the utility and the leadership content, highlight it, because sometimes are you someone who wants to be the expert, or do you want to be the pushing forward and curious and that side of things? And usually people will veer one way or the other, and there's no right or wrong, by the way. It's actually, I listened to a good podcast the other day, and I might get the name wrong of who it was, so I won't say it, but they were talking about a similar sort of a thing, but their whole thing is expertise is becoming a commodity, and you need to be a visionary. So I might say a thought leader or a leader, and they're saying visionary, and I think, well, that's very highfalutin, so that might scare a few people off. But it's the same. It's the same thing. You're probably going to veer one way or the other. But if you are an expert, you've got to be damn good, and therefore it's what you do with that expertise and how you communicate, how you articulate it, package it, and communicate it.
And that ties also back into, as you get deeper understanding of your audience, that's where the evolution of that voice and that message becomes more relevant to your audience, but more attuned to your own philosophies, personalities, etc. as well, which I also think is a great thing to highlight. Is I'm working with a couple of smaller businesses at the moment, and they're going, but I just need to get the website done, and I need to get the wording done as though it's going to be done forever. And we as humans are always evolving, and I think that's one of the key messages is we are always evolving, and to give people permission to actually be evolving, because things will constantly change if you are curious and being of service.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that you said it right there about being of service and understanding that, and understanding your audience and working with them. I guess the other part is, how do you want to position yourself in the market? And this part of that strategy. And it's quite an interesting one, because I use a tool, simple circles, Venn diagrams again. It's all about, I call it the spheres of conversation. And I just say, well, what are the conversations? What are the issues, the topics, the conversations, the public conversations that you want to be part of, or lead, or ignite debate around? And that differs from the online marketers who say, "Oh, what's your niche?" and get down to the nth degree. Most people I talk to have got no idea. They don't want to go into a niche, and I understand the niche inside of marketing. This is PR and communications. I talk sort of reputation and brand and profile, and this builds the base 365 days of the year. People get hung up on the marketing. If you're just doing online marketing, but you're not building your brand and your base and the trust and the visibility and all of that, you're going to be in a world of pain. You're going to have deep pockets, because it's the same as you open Facebook and you see ads from people you've never heard of. But if you've been out there adding value for time and time again, then you pitch. I call it credibility before conversion. When you build that credibility first, then you start paying for social media, social ads, and probably doing a bit more SEO and all of that. Then all the parts are working together. But if you neglect the hard yards about doing the other, and there's some people who build a brand that's so well, they don't need to spend any money on advertising. But if you don't build a brand and you don't build that reputation, you're going to have to spend a lot
of money. Yeah, so true. It's that those fundamental foundations that give you the leverage and the literally the trampoline to jump higher and reach more people. And Derek just commented and was talking about, when you're sharing your opinions and you're getting your feedback, that is part of that curiosity, and you get to refine and see different perspectives and viewpoints. And I think that's very much part of the equal exchange that occurs when you're producing your own content, and you're sharing it with people. You get their insights, which actually creates leverage for you. And I think that's where that as I said, the equal exchange occurs when you're out creating content.
Yeah. And what do you see around the corner? Well, no one's a futurist. There's a lot of futurists out there, but no one ever goes back to check whether they ever got it right or not. But the whole idea is, you don't have to get it right. You just have to say, look, this is where I see things going. It might not be right, but these are some trends or some where things are headed. Or you might just say, look, I'm bouncing over to here. I just believe this is the world today. I think it's really jammed up over here and noisy, so I'm going to build my own island here.
And isn't that part of sharing the story and inviting sharing the journey and inviting people to join that story of that journey with you as well?
Well, you work with authors, right? And there was a time, and even with businesses. So if you look at businesses and startups and authors, right? Two very different beasts, but it's very similar. You never, if you were going to launch a business, you'd hold it in. You'd have the big unveil. And same with a car, a big unveil. No one's ever seen it before. Or a book, da-da, I'm here. I'm launching tomorrow. It's my book launch. Yeah. Years ago, no one talked about it in advance, right? Today, they're talking about it, if it's on books, before. They're talking about it before they even start putting a word down.
Yeah, writing about it. Totally.
They do. The good ones do, because you bring people onto the journey. So when the book's out, you've already written about it, you've discussed the ideas, you've put them out there, and all of a sudden,
hungry audience.
You've got your audience, but you're writing it in your head as you go as well. I mean, I put 2 covers up. I remember putting 2 covers up of my last book, Content Marketing for PR, and I put them up on LinkedIn side by side, and I said, look, I've got 2 designs. I have no idea which one. I had 10. I got 2. I got no idea which one's going to be the best one. So I put it on LinkedIn. I reckon, if I recall, it was around 70,000 views on it. Like, it was just went off the charts, because everyone has an opinion, and it was great. And that was before the book was. I was getting close, but I was still a couple of months away.
And so in that instance, was there I was always curious about that. Was there a clear winner? And from that, from the insights around that clear winner, did you change or tweak anything?
I oscillated between the 2. One I felt was more creative and interesting. The other was going to work better on Amazon if you're on on your phone or something like that. It was 50-50, by the way, pretty much 50-50.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so that exercise didn't actually help me at all.
Didn't help,
No, it did, because people who went with the one that was the obvious one that would really work, it was, that one works. The people, a lot of the people who looked at the other side, the one that I've got now, that I went with, and I felt it was a bit more of a creative feel, and it just probably hit me more emotionally. They had a little bit more to say about, it says this or whatever. And I felt that was where I am. So that's me. You'll have some people say, well, this is going to work because it's true to type, and it's pretty obvious and it stands out. I'm not that person. I'm saying, this is cool. I'm going to go with this. It's the same with an SEO headline of an article. Do I want an SEO headline that's boring, or do I want that's really interesting? I'll go with the interesting one. I know that, and I know there's right and wrong with all of that, but that's the way I'm wired.
Yeah. And doesn't that come back to the very first conversation we had around understanding who you are and how you play your game? So you know which way. So you've got your consistency of brand and of your own demonstration of who you are to your audience.
Correct. Yep. Understanding yourself, and we've all got to have that introspection at some time, but particularly if you're going down this path, it's a good idea. So that's, and content then is around, the social media channels that you're going to use and where your audience is. But, like, the only other thing with that is that, your audience might be on Facebook, but do they want to hear from you on Facebook? If you're a business, well, yes, my audience is on Facebook, but the sort of things I talk about might not be right for Facebook. Look, I think you need a 1-2 punch. You need a one main channel, and you need a sort of a backup a secondary one that's social. But then I'm a believer in having an owned media, committing to one owned media channel, and then mastering that and moving on. So that is it is it a podcast? Is it an email newsletter that you're building? Is it a blog? I think everyone should probably have a blog anyway, because all your podcasts go on a blog anyway. Yes. But is it text? Are you going to write articles for your blog? Or are you going to have a YouTube show? Now, yes, I get the fact that YouTube, you don't own it. It's not an owned media asset, but it kind of is, because you just take the videos and you put them on your own channel anyway. So are you going to go with video, live streaming, text-based articles, audio or email newsletter? They're pretty much what you've got to play with. And the thing is, if you don't like being on video, don't do video. If you love writing, you've got to write. You might say, but my audience doesn't read. Of course they read, like you've got to do what's going to give you longevity and you're going to get you excited. And once you do that, then you can cross boundaries a bit, then you can write and you can do a few things. But I'm more cognizant of getting people getting going, because if they try and do everything, and after you've been doing it a while and you've got some help and you know where the dots join and everything, that's when you take it up a notch and you build that omnipresence online.
Yes.
And I think that can be incredibly powerful if you've got the will and the resources to do it. That really puts you ahead of the pack, because you're going to be seen everywhere. Well, hopefully in the right places, not everywhere.
Yeah, beautiful. I'd like to also explore one of the things that you said in your recent blog as it related to extending your reach of the voice, was understanding who influences them.
Yes, so that's the third E. So the first one was empower your voice, enhance the credibility of your voice. This is extending the reach of your voice. Now, this is just by way of context. This is about, there's two parts to this. One is about, spreading your story and your message and your ideas further than your existing network and audience. And then it's also about building that audience, but it's not about numbers per se. I think the secret really is the community and building a better connection with your audience. So let's take the extending your reach and reaching beyond your networks. So the things to do here really are what we call media relations in the PR game. This is what a lot of people think public relations is. It's media relations. And this is really, is there a radio show you need to be on? Is there a newspaper or local press, or, probably more likely an industry publication or blog? And I like the hybrid ones, which are run professionally, but then they're still run by one or two people. And they've, they run on the smell of an oily rag, and they often need content. So the hybrid ones are really, really good to do. But that's looking at media and then saying, okay, well, which channels will reach my audience, or which ones do I need to be in to be seen, to be positioned right. So there's two different things. One is to reach an audience, or another one, my audience is not really here, but hey, it's a bloody good name to be seen in. So, that's the strategic thinking around it. And then that's a whole different ballgame. You've got to go out to there. But look, our media is now, podcasters and YouTubers, and this is a media channel as well. So I like to extend it out to, my definition of media now is you guys as well, me as a podcaster, that sort of thing. And that opens the scope of, let's start small and, maybe build up and get our confidence and our ideas going. And then, as you start going up the chain, then hopefully you can get into the industry publication, or if you're good enough, you might be able to get it into it there. But emphasis on the relations part. It's just sending in a press release probably won't work. Like that working now, unless your news is just breakthrough and off the charts, forget it. Really, the smart way to do it is really one good story, one publication. So I was working with a global consultancy, and they had a good story, and it was right for managers. And we looked at Management Today in the UK. Perfect blog. Perfect. Well, it's not a blog; it's more of a magazine. But really well positioned. We pitched to them, and we put a lot of thought into the story. But to make things a lot easier, that was still cold. But when you've got professionals doing the liaison, they know kind of what to say. But if you're doing it yourself, it's often, maybe there's a podcast you want to be on, and you connect with that person on Twitter, and chances are they are on Twitter. You connect on LinkedIn, you just add value, you share their stuff, you just get to know and understand who they talk to, who's on the show, what the sorts of questions they ask. And then when you're ready, pitch something that's going to really hit them between the eyes. It's going to be really correct and resonate. Now, it's not going to work every time, but what you've got to do is give yourself the best opportunity. I mean, I'm being pitched all the time on stuff that's totally and utterly irrelevant. It's worth it. But if someone's got a name and I've heard of them, or maybe they've been conversing with me on Twitter or something, I'm going to, prick my ears up. So it's about building relationships with key people, not trying to be on every place. And if you build your brand big enough, people will come to you.
Yeah.
That's the thing. If you build it big enough and you're out there, then it's a push-pull. Yes, I've got a great idea. I want to pitch it out or pulling back. And I know a number of people who, you know, I was speaking to someone the other day, and there was a topic that came up on Sunday, and she put the time in on Sunday night, and she wrote the pitch. She wrote the article because she's written a number of times for this very niche but very influential newsletter. And she pitched it that night, and it was up by 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Now, if she'd never really written for them or hadn't built that rapport with them in advance, it may have been a little more difficult. Well, it would have been a lot more difficult. So that's media relations. Influencer relations, well, everyone's an influencer. So that's probably more your power Twitter users, or, you know, who's active on LinkedIn that's got a decent following and they're active, and, you know, maybe you get involved with them. But then I talk about micro power brokers, and that might be, not a big media proprietor. Or what I'm talking about is, you know, are you in an industry where there's a professional association, and who's the president of that, or the chairperson, or the, you know, CEO? You know, they've got sway. In fact, they would have an email newsletter. Yeah. Why can't you write for that email newsletter to go out to your industry? So there's no cookie cutter with any of this, but it's about if you've done your homework, you've built that credibility, then the media relations works. Now, you can dodge I suggest you never dodge the content side, but if you have got a good background, you're active on social, you're building your audience, they can see that on social, you're out there, you've got a point of view, and you're writing some really good content, really good blog, for example, and then you pitch to someone, say you pitch to a radio producer for a radio show, could be a community show to start something smaller. But it's talk back, right? And they want someone who knows their stuff, who can talk, who can have a point of view. And if they'll check you out. Of course, they're going to check you out. And if they go to your website, you do have a website, right? If you don't, you're in trouble, potentially. But you've got to make it easy for them. If you've got a website with your blog, or send them to the blog, or you've got a medium.com blog or whatever, you send them to that. They have a look. Okay, I'm comfortable now. Because all producers want is comfort. Because if they put the wrong person on, then the person who's hosting the show is, you know, pin them back by the ears later and say, "Where'd you get that mug?" So credibility, and this is something we don't talk about in content, is validation. So it's validation for clients and customers and media and other influencers. People are going to check you out. And we know the stats, something like 80% of people will check you out before even doing business with you, before even ringing you or contacting you. So you look at it from a media perspective, you look at it from a business partnership opportunity perspective, they're going to check you out. And will what they find do the professional you justice? And that is absolutely critical. So that's where the content comes in. That's where what you do on social plays out. But it does play a role if you're going to try and get onto some articles. I saw someone the other day, and she got a fantastic article up in an online publication. And, you know, they know her. They know her background. They know everything that, she's out there and doing things, live videos and blog posts and stuff like that. So what you're doing is reducing the risk, and people love reducing the risk. So that's where they sit together, those things. And I think never underestimate the power of having a coffee with someone who's a bit of a thought leader in your space, and getting to know them and getting part of their circle in a genuine, friendly way, and add value to them. That's all. Media and influencer relations. We hear about influencer marketing, don't we? You know, there's a TikToker out there or an Instagrammer who pouts really well. You know, have they got influence? Yeah, that's to be decided. But the other thing there is that's marketing. You're paying them dollars to spruik on your behalf. Influencer relations is building a relationship with them, so they love your blog posts. They're going to share that with their audience. Yeah,
brilliant.
Two different mindsets: marketing and PR.
And that comes back to the relationships. We just had a question come up across on the ticker that was, how do you maximize your posts that get shared? And I would add to that we've just talked about that the best way to maximize any type of engagement is to actually build that relationship with somebody, reach back out to them, have that, connecting coffee with them, find out a little bit more. And that's where to me, the magic happens.
Yeah. Look, if you put something great on LinkedIn and people are commenting on it, how many people don't go back to the people commenting? How many people don't connect? They might be second degree networks, and you don't, you're not even proactively going back and connecting with them. Look, it's about, if people are putting comments on or following you or sharing your stuff or whatever, you want to acknowledge that. And that's part of that growing that audience. That's the slow, sustainable way of growing that audience. You might have 100,000, in your audience, but do you know your top 100?
Yeah.
Do you know the people who open, you'll know who opens all your emails, right? Have you ever connected with them? Have you ever gone out of your way to help them? No. So they're the little things that, if you look at it strategically, it makes sense, but it's small things. But once you understand that, it becomes part of your daily habit. That's when extending the reach of your voice can be very powerful, because then it could be on the stage, it could be, don't forget who organizes the main conferences in your industry. They're an influencer. They're a media influencer. Their media just happens to be an event. So if there's an event you need to be on, you know what to do. You've got to start preparing for that and find out who to get close to, and just pitch a great idea. And you might lose one year, but you'll back it up the next year,
And I think that's just as I'm just watching the time, because I know you and I can go a lot, keep going and keep going and keep going. I think one of the key, it's been brilliant. I think that's one of the key things, is those daily habits of connecting with the right people and building the relationships, because that to me ties into your strategic, sustainable and respectful. I'll finish that. But please wrap up anything that you'd like to in the last few minutes.
Well, you just said about that relationship side of things and connection, and make it part of your daily habit. I look at PR as identifying, it's about deepening the level of connection with the people who matter the most to the success of your business or cause or issue, if you're in the non-profit social entrepreneur space. Who are they? Are you literally deepening your connection with them? And content plays a role, social plays a role, coffees play a role, all of that. I'll just wrap up very quickly with extract. The fourth E is extract the value from the profile and the reputation that you build. That's the commercialization of your brand. That's when it's what opportunities are out there over and above what I'm already doing to do this, because we've got the tools, the technology, the wherewithal now to do that. And it also will be that, that's where you probably start paying for, if you want to start scaling, ramping it up around your ideas, that's when you get into the more hardcore paid for digital marketing initiatives.
Brilliant. And I've just asked Roxy to pop the ticker up for everyone so they can see that as they're listening and as we close out. This is Trevor's highly sought after e-news, and the best way to connect with him and certainly get some more of these tips to give you great forward movement as it relates to increasing your visibility, your impact, and your positioning in this thought leadership space. So do jump on and grab the opportunity to connect with Trevor in that first element. So Trevor, thank you very, very, very much for sharing so much of your incredible insights. I think we might need to do another show, because I think there's a lot more that we can actually unpack together. I've got at least 4 or 5 other questions circled on my notes to discuss with you. So I think we might have to do that at some time. So thank you very, very much for sharing so much wisdom with us. And please reach out to Trevor Young through LinkedIn. It's one of his favourite places to be. You'll also find him on Twitter, but the best place to drop on in is on LinkedIn. So Trevor Young on LinkedIn, and do jump onto his newsletter as well. Thank you very, very much. Look forward to seeing you all again next week. Thank you very much, Trevor. And we'll see you again very, very soon.
That's it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for joining us, and I trust that you got some inspirational tips to move you forward. You can find this episode along with many more on your favorite streaming platform such as iHeartRadio, Spotify, iTunes, and more. See you next Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time for more Success Secrets Exposed with Sally A. Curtis.